keeping the shutter just with the shim up off the sill slightly. The shutter is going to be tight against the outside edge, and basically it's the same with the top. I'm just going to use some painter's tape just to assist me to keep the shutter in place. Just to prevent that from falling back, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. I'll do the same with the tape on this side. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to use a Connecticut style Acorn hinge, and I'm just basically going to lay it in front of the shutter. There's some old hinge marks that we've replaced, and we're going to be installing the new one. And basically what I want to do is mark the distance between the first screw hole and where the pivot point is on the hinge, and kind of get the gap between the shutter and the frame somewhat in the middle. And I'll mark that screw hole. First screw hole, I'm going to use a 1/8 inch drill bit. So I just want to mark with a piece of tape that drill, approximately 3/4 inch, slightly less. That way I know what depth to drill the screw hole, because the shutters are only 3/4 of an inch thick. Okay, and I'm only going to be drilling to where the mark is on the tape. Just so it's snug, not absolutely tight yet. I'm just going to take my combination square and make sure that the hinge going by the frame here is that the hinge is somewhat level, which it is. And we're going to drill the remaining 2 screw holes. And we'll install those second screw holes. And I'm screwing these in by hand because I'd rather not use a power tool. If I use a power tool, the screws will go in too tightly and it'll damage the finish that's on the hinge itself. So doing it by hand is so much better. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is just mark just below the center of the pivot point hole, almost the diameter of what the pencil is below the hole, right at the center of the hole itself. And that's going to be the location of our pivot pintle. Okay, now we're ready to take the shutters down, and we're going to drill for the pivot pintles using a 1/4 inch drill bit. So I'm going to mark off this drill bit also, because these are going to go in fairly deeply, so that's how far I want the screw hole. So I'm going to drill in just up to about 1/3 of the way or 2/3 of the way up the shaft. This is the hole that we had marked off. Okay, now we're actually installing the pintles. It's just a matter of threading them in. I'm just trying to slide it down onto the pintles that we've installed. Lining up might be a little bit tricky, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, so we're going to keep the shutters open, we're going to be using the S-type shutter dog. And just for the installation of these, it comes with a plastic washer, which goes on first. That's just a protection between the hex head of the lag bolt and the paint surface of the shutter dog. Once that's done, it's what we call a star washer. The bulging side of it, you want away from the shutter dog. And those basically slide on right up to the shutter dog. And that way it'll keep that in position. And it's just a matter of installing it with a ratchet. Okay, we're using pre-existing holes. But if it were a new installation and there were no hole there, it's not rocket science, and it doesn't exactly have to be the same way each time. Anywhere from 2 to 4 inches, just towards the outside edge of the shutter, just so it has a little bit of leverage. The hole itself is going to be about 1.25 inches down, and why it's that length is that when the shutter dog is installed, you want to be able to put it horizontal so you'll be able to swing the shutter over it in case you want to clean behind there, paint it, remove it. But for now, we're just going to install the large end of the shutter dog is always going to be on the bottom. Just for gravity reason, it's going to want to keep it hanging below. But when it's somewhat snug against the shutter right now, the shutter's not really moving around. I could go a little bit tighter, but I think that's fine the way it is. But again, if we want to open the shutter or close it up against the window, you swing it off to the side, and there you go. You could have these facing either direction, whatever's preferable. It is not one way or the other. These come also with an anti-rattle hook, which basically you want the shutter dog in the somewhat horizontal position, and either to the top left-hand side of this particular one. So we're just going to use a 1/16 inch drill bit. Keep that location fine. Drill a couple holes. Going to install some smaller flathead screws. So it just simply slips into place. That way your shutter is nice and snug.